We're recording now.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us from all over the world. My name is Devar Ardalan. I'm the founder of iVow AI. And today I'm very blessed to be here with Swathi Young. Together, we're going to be co-moderating the conversation today around cultural AI, diverse data sets, where are they hidden? And just a brief background about why we're talking about cultural AI. We are at a historic time in our nation, and it's more important than ever to be able to talk about how AI products and solutions are being made, who's producing them, and how can we make them be more relevant culturally to people around the world, and especially here in the United States, where AI products and solutions are being built and designed. So how can we come together and make sure that as influencers, we influence the course of how these products are being made? So I'm going to give it to Swathi to introduce herself, and then we'll be introducing our panelists.
Thank you, Devar. And good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world, to all the participants and our esteemed guests. Thank you again for showing up for this event today. And I'm excited because Devar is working on a topic that's close to my heart. And when Devar approached me about a couple of months ago to do the series of events of cultural AI, I was super pumped and excited because iVow is doing some amazing work. I know Pink Lion, led by Jennifer, is also doing some amazing work. Leisha, Jessica, all of you amazing women working on bringing diversity to technology, which is the need of the hour, right? So a little bit about myself. I'm the Chief Technology Officer of Integrity Management Services, and we provide healthcare innovative solutions for federal agencies as well as commercial organizations. Apart from that, I volunteer on a few other projects like Women in AI, which is a nonprofit that started in France but has members with over 190 countries. And I'm proud to actually attain the goal of Women in AI, which is increasing diversity in, and participation of women and other genders in the world of artificial intelligence. The other thing briefly is I'm the founder of DC Emerging Technologies, a local community in Washington, DC. And we have over 2,000 members, and we host events about usage of emerging technologies. More recently, I'm co-authoring Ethical AI Framework for the federal government in the United States. Welcome, everybody. We are happy to have you today. Over to you, Devar.
Thank you so much. So we have remarkable panelists who've joined us from all over the US, and I would love to have each of you take a minute to introduce yourself. So we have Leisha Bell, who is joining us from Pipeline Angels. We have Aprajita Mathur from Garden Health, who has joined us. We are having Jessica Davis from Microsoft, Jennifer Bonin from pinklion.ai. And it's just super exciting. So before we launch into the actual program, I'd like to give them each an opportunity to introduce themselves. And Leisha, let's begin with you. And tell us where you're joining from.
Hello from San Francisco Bay Area, still under quarantine, but here. My name is Leisha Bell. I serve as the deal flow lead for Pipeline Angels. Pipeline Angels is an organization that supports women and femmes with capital. We know that women get less than 2% of capital, and if you're a woman of color, that's less than 1%. So I am here supporting organizations that amplify women and particularly women's stories, which is why Devar is a dear friend of mine, and I serve as an advisor to iVow. My day job, because we all wear many hats on this call, I'm a payments technologist. I specialize in digital money movement. I'm the product owner for Venmo Commerce. So in the US, Venmo is a very popular P2P payments tool, and I focus on our relationship with merchants here within the PayPal ecosystem. So that's who I am. I'll pass it to the next person.
Amazing. Jessica, let's go to you.
Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning. My name is Jessica Davis, and I am the Director of Government Programs and Initiatives for Microsoft. So I primarily work with our federal clients with their modernization efforts. The Microsoft mission is empowering every person and organization to achieve more, and there's not a better way that we're able to do this, but through technology and especially artificial intelligence. So I'm very excited, what Devar is doing with iVal and how it's going to empower women and really change the way that society is. And so looking forward to being here today.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And Jennifer, let's go to you next.
Hello, everyone. I am joining from Minneapolis, Minnesota. I'm the CEO of Pink Lion. Our mission when we started Pink Lion, my background was Fortune 100 technology leadership. And what I strived for and wanted in the world was more diversity in technology and companies that led with social impact at their core while still maintaining and achieving revenue targets and goals. And I believe those two things can work collectively together in harmony. So we started Pink Lion with the mission of creating technology that would serve the world with a more inclusive and diverse voice. As we go into this fourth industrial revolution, I think all the technology we're building needs to be inclusive of all of the individuals that will be using it. So I'm proud and honored to be here with such amazing panelists and women today and work very closely with Devar. Ever since I've met her, I support fully the initiatives that she's been working on because I believe they will change the world.
Amazing. And Aprajita Mathur, my sister, joining from somewhere in San Francisco area.
Hi everyone, I'm Aprajita Mathur. I also go by the name AP. I decided to dress up today with my traditional outfit just for the VAR. I live in the Bay Area and I have a son and a husband, and I mainly take care of them, making sure that they grow up well, both of them actually. And as a day job, I lead the bioinformatics software test team at Guardant Health. Guardant is a leading provider in the space of liquid biopsies. And so we do precision oncology, and our main aim is to do better for our patients, for cancer patients. I met Devar about a year ago now, actually, at a test conference. And when I heard her talk about data and AI and biases, it really brought me back to 15 years of my career in healthcare and how I have seen not good data impacting healthcare. And it just snapped for me. I was like, oh my God, someone is fixing this in the sense of culture. And that is so important because there's so many voices around the world that are not heard, especially me being an immigrant to the US coming from India. So I have been acting as an advisor for iVal since then, and I am so proud of her for whatever she's achieved so far, and I'm looking forward to all the future years to come for her.
Thank you so much. And a big shout out also to Ali Brandenberger of The Bridge, who has been promoting our Cultural AI series. So we're very grateful to you, Ali. And AP, I want to stick with you for the first question to really talk about, what is the problem that we're trying to address? Because similar to what you said about your experience in the healthcare industry and the lack of diverse data, tell us a little bit about, how we came together. We did, put together the foundations of a dataset challenge that now Top Coder will be leading a data ideation challenge with us together with Microsoft and Pink Lion as sponsors. Why do we need to source new data sets, especially focused on the stories of women?
Sure. So a few years back, there was an initiative that started in healthcare industry called precision medicine. And the reason that initiative was started was because within the medical industry and healthcare industry, we realized that even though any drug that you generate or create works for most of the population in the way it's expected to work, it doesn't work for everybody, right? And also, mostly if the development of these drugs are being done in the Western world, then there's this whole set of world that isn't considered. Like, so for myself as an Asian, it's not tested on that phenotype or that population of individuals, and it may or may not work the same way it would work on a Caucasian individual. So that being said, this is a challenge in the medical industry. And when I met Davar, it sounded like starting a personalized AI or personalized data set challenge in AI, which was fabulous because now you're trying to understand different stories that are genuine, that we teach our children every day. I teach my son stories. I want him to continue to take that culture, move it forward, but then also learn from this beautiful different people that he meets. Within US is one of those places where you can meet so many diverse people, learn from others as well. And this was really taking that at a software level and putting it out in the world, because right now, he's talking to Siri and Google more than I do. And I want to make sure that when he grows up, I have my grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren, like they know my culture, but they also know and understand the culture from other parts of the world. And we don't make the same mistakes that we have made, like in healthcare, for example, because this is so important.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And Lisha, I want to go to you next with this same question. Obviously, in the context of COVID, we know how different communities of color have been impacted. And there is research that shows that patient-sensitive, culturally aware, healthcare really helps in terms of getting patients not only the care that potentially would help them get well better, but also a better understanding of how different communities come to some of these issues around health. So do you mind talking a little bit about specifically why you think when it comes to the African-American community or other communities of color, we need to have new data sets for AI?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're talking about, the virus disparate outcomes. And we know that marginalized groups are impacted in a significant way by disparities that we have. So we know particularly the Black community has less access to healthcare, is treated disparately in medical situations, is less likely to trust doctors and physicians and healthcare staff, for all in the comorbidities that we have as a community, puts us at a greater risk. So when you have a situation today where not only physical risk, there's the economic disparity as well, where we know that the impact of COVID impact the marginalized groups in a significant way. So you have people who may have healthcare disparities, on top of that, economic disparities, and then let's not forget about the race riot, the toxic and mental distress of that is all very crippling. And when we enter healthcare systems that see a Black woman and they say she's, for example, use terminology like she's a crackhead. We know crack is tied to Black people. Cocaine is a term that's used for White people. Crack is a term used for Black people. Yep.
Your audio is cutting in and out a tiny bit. So I just wanted to let you know that the last 20 seconds was hard to hear.
Okay, I'll stop video. Is that a little bit better?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just systemically, when we use terminology, for example, like crack cocaine, or we decide someone's a crackhead, that is related particularly to Black people and the stigma that applies to that. So I think it's very important when we talk about how do we amplify these marginalized communities, is that we start them off at a equal starting point so that we clearly can diagnose and understand what problem we're trying to solve with with limitations of our biases, because that definitely has a triple impact on how we are perceived and seen here.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And we will be sharing a link in the chat to a indigenous knowledge graph that we presented yesterday to the United Nations. And this really was around looking at Native American communities, Cherokee, Navajo, Crow tribe of Montana, and seeing how their relationship to food really can be tracked through a graph, and how that can allow future AI systems to understand how indigenous cultures treat, food and ingredients with seasonality. It's very much related to what Leisha is saying. Machines know zero about us, zero. What are we going to teach them? We need to be able to teach them about our culture, our heritage, and how we also engage throughout the world. So Jennifer, I want to go to you and then to Jessica, and then I'm going to hand it over to Swathi for the second question. So Jennifer, something that you have been talking about very prominently is the fact that there's evidence that having more women engaged in technology, especially in tech companies, basically not just shows more revenue growth, but shows more productivity in startups. There's a lot of interesting statistics around this that you've looked at. Why is it important for females in the tech industry to stand up and be able to lead this next generation of AI products and solutions and make sure that their data sets are more inclusive?
I think there's definitely diversity of thought that we need in this next generation of technology, and diverse voices. We all see a problem differently. We look at things differently depending on what our perception of the issue is, where we come from, our backgrounds, and that can be where we've lived, the countries we've been to and visited or lived. It can be our socioeconomic background. With a lack of diversity comes lack of insight that we need to create the products that actually serve a broader population. There's been huge examples of that in history, where organizations that lacked diversity in the designing, development, and deployment of products missed complete areas, and they created very biased systems, which perpetuated bias from the past into current systems, which we don't want to do. So I think it's really critical that we take a look now. And it's, a lot of people, I would love if people thought of diversity and inclusion as the right thing to do, because they understood as a human being, we need that diversity and inclusivity in the world. But aside from that, as you mentioned, there's studies that actually show higher diversity leads to higher innovation. Higher innovation leads to higher revenues and the ability to have products that service the needs of more people. So there's data that supports not only is it the right thing to do, but economically, it's the right thing to do. And, having been to the World Economic Forum, one of the things we talked about with the 100,000 Women Challenge across the globe was that we could add $5 trillion to the GDP if women had the same opportunities as men to start companies and businesses and lead those organizations with their unique skill sets that they have and gifts and talents they bring to the world. And I also think right now is a time for empathy and understanding. We see it in all the surveys of what are the top soft skills we need. We know that a lot of women lead with empathy naturally, and we're seeing that across the globe as some of the female leaders who are leading countries with that empathy are seeing increased success in dealing with the current crisis.
Thank you so much. So we're going to go to Jessica with Microsoft, and Jessica is a sponsor of the Women Data Ideation Challenge with Top Coder and also with Pink Lion. So maybe tell us a little bit, Jessica, about what your thoughts are, and also the fairness tool that Microsoft just put out. Tell us a little bit about that, and then we'll pass it to Swathi.
Sure. So, I think it's really important to understand that AI models are going to be biased by default. There's this for a variety of reasons, whether it's society, or technological impacts. And so, it's not even just the data scientist or whoever's creating the algorithm and their conscious or unconscious biases that are part of this, but it's also the data. And that's why it's so important to be able to have data sets that are focused on women and different cultures, because by integrating that data, that becomes part of the bigger pool of all data that all of these machine learning algorithms become part of. And one of the, you said at the beginning, why is this so important? And I think when you think about AI and you think about the biases, you have to think about what harm does that bias have on people. And so, these harms can kind of range from several different, areas, from, make the quality of service for that product or solution. For voice solution may better understand men than women, for example, or it can go all the way to impacting an individual's ability or a group of individuals' ability to get loans, to be admitted to school, to be able to get accepted into a job. We've seen this in the news, and it's critical that everybody is aware of the biases of these systems, that we're able to be transparent about how these models are created, and then work to be able to mitigate those factors. And you had talked about, or asked me about, the a recent solution, actually an open source toolkit that Microsoft just announced at our Build developer conference a few weeks ago, called Fair Learn. And so what this is, it's basically a toolkit that allows data scientists and developers to be able to assess their existing model, be able to see if there are any biases that are, that are a part of that, and part of that algorithm. It shows you that, and then it says, if you make these changes, this can make it less biased, but it might impact the model. And so you kind of take a look at the performance of the model and compare it with the biases, and then you can kind of make your own decision. But like I said, this is open source, available on GitHub today. We're integrating it into the Azure machine learning product very shortly, but it's a great way to be able to really better understand the biases that are inherent in the different models, and how you can help mitigate those biases.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Jessica. I know there's questions coming in, and so Jessica and panelists, as we continue the conversation, feel free to answer folks on the chat. As I pass it on to Swathi, I just wanted to share that I spent 22 years at NPR News. I was a senior producer. My last position at NPR was senior producer of the Identity and Culture Unit. And as I looked at the future of automation and all of the ways that our stories are going to be reflected or not reflected in AI, I knew that it was my responsibility to see what I could do. So I'm very honored that Key Molesky, one of the journalists, legendary journalists from NPR News, librarian for many years, is on our team. And Robert Molesky, as well as Nisa McCoy, who has incredible experience at NASA, others who we've come together to see how we can use the craft of storytelling to help machines understand us better. So we will be getting into voice also. I know somebody just asked about that, and I will share some links. Here we go. I'm going to share it, pass it now to Swathi.
Thank you, Devar. This is an amazing discussion and very relevant for a couple of reasons. One, with what is currently going on in the United States and rest of the world about Black Lives Matter. And two, I think the time is apt because we are all dealing with the pandemic situations, and we have seen even during the pandemic how technology is being used either to enhance or help us, or in some cases overriding privacy concerns, technology not being used in a decent manner that it's supposed to be. So coming to an interesting thing Jessica was mentioning about the fairness tool, as a data practitioner, I'm very excited about tools that help with biases, in data sets because machine learning is the most popular form of artificial intelligence, and human biases are amplified when machines are trained to learn from data. But I'm going to make a little segue from that topic of bias because as a practitioner data scientist, talking about bias is a really good and relevant to the current situation, but also talking about cultural stories that Davar was alluding to. And in my head, these two are different problems which might have same roots, but have to be addressed differently. One is obviously biased and variety of data sets and diversity of a data practitioner or a committee to evaluate the data. But on the other hand, we also need data sets that have to be made available that include cultural stories. That's a slightly different problem. Like Jennifer pointed out, I think even UNESCO has done a research study that proves that the diversity actually has a huge economic impact, right? So, and today, almost every large and small organization in the world want personalized messages to their consumers. So you can see examples of Nike ads, Apple ads, right? So you might, me as being an Indian American might receive a different ad compared to my friend who's of a different origin. But more and more organizations need the diverse data sets, need the cultural data sets to actually create those hyper-personalization which consumers and millennials come to expect from companies. So my question will be, starting with Aprajita, where are these hidden data sets? What can organizations think about in the next upcoming years about finding these hidden data sets about including culturally relevant narratives and stories? Aprajita?
Thank you, Swati. So I think the hidden data sets are really here, right? The first time I met Davar, like I told her that in India, it's very common practice to put like a red dot on your forehead. And a lot of people don't know why. So if I was to share that with my son, right, and I would want that story to pass on, I need to write it down somewhere, or I need to be able to share that. So I think the hidden data sets is two-part. One is to make sure that people are aware that we're collecting these stories so that they share them, right? Second is making it as inclusive as possible so that when people do want to share these stories, they're able to. Right now, we don't have any platform or any way of even collecting, even if I wanted to share, right? So the problem is two parts. It's like having a telephone that only works on one end and not the other. Like I can say I want to be inclusive, but then, you know, if I don't have a connection on the other side, how am I going to be inclusive? So the problem is two parts. I think it needs to come from the public.
Thank you, Aprajita. And Jennifer, over to you. I know you're doing some very good work with Pink Lion, and I'm sure you have struggled or challenged with finding the data sets that you want to include in your models. Can you tell us a little bit about how you have actually solved this challenge, or what do you foresee for organizations who are trying to find culturally relevant data sets to adopt in the next coming years and even a decade from now?
Yeah, that's why we early on sponsored the Dataset Challenge with Davar and IVAL, because we recognized as we were building the technologies we were leveraging that there was a lot missing there. And so we're very excited to see more of that coming into play, because it really wasn't there. We didn't have that. And, you know, just some of the work that's going on around when you ask, you know, you think about, we talk about all of us, a lot of us have a next generation that we're helping to raise. And as we raise that generation, when they're talking to Amazon, Alexa, all of these things, you want them to be able to ask the questions that they hear from their friends about what's a quinceañera and why is that significant. And today, if you're asking those questions, as Davar so aptly points out, you don't necessarily get that unless you're using that culturally inclusive data. And then you take that further and say, when companies who are recommending travel and other types of entertainment and plans, they're going to need that information to help their consumers make more informed decisions. So our interest is working and cultivating those data sets with organizations such as with what Devar is doing with iVow, utilizing different groups and populations as she's doing, starting with women, Indigenous people, moving on to other ones as well. There's a lot of these hidden data sets that we need to get and we need access to for all companies building technology.
Thank you. Thank you. That was so relevant to this conversation. Leisha, going to you. I know you're working on at Venmo as well as at a venture capitalist funding all the women-owned startups. What is your take on how this challenge can be solved? Because we all know we need diverse data sets, but sometimes, like Aprajita rightly pointed out, it's in our head and our hearts, and a machine learning algorithm cannot extract what's in our head and heart, right? So Leisha, I want to hear from you. What are some of the things that stakeholders, users, technologists, or otherwise can go about when they think about these data sets about culturally rich, heritage-related stories?
Yeah, I think it's important. I mean, right now, with the focus of Black Lives Matter, I'm expected to be a Black expert on everything. Can you talk about this? And it's like, I'm not equipped to support an entire race of people with their stories. For example, next week, many African Americans are celebrating Juneteenth. It's the day that the slaves were freed. We don't celebrate with vigor 4th of July here in America because we were enslaved. So, there's like these data points of our story that I didn't learn about Juneteenth in school. Nobody taught me about this holiday. But, in my day job, we're always trying to understand consumer behavior. We're watching the spend of people, right? What spend is cultural? Why do, a lot of people in my community give money to church? That's something that we do. It's something we've been raised to do our whole lives, is give money to church. And I think as we try to understand consumer behaviors, spending patterns, what is important to us in our hearts. So I work for Venmo, which is we call ourselves social commerce. It's very socially connected. It's about community and how do people interact in communities, and I think as we try to understand that, we need to back that up with how, with our behaviors and data that builds those behaviors and those dynamics. So when you talk to me, it sounds authentic, it sounds eloquent, it sounds like you know me, you understand me, you get me. And I think that's why we need to support it in kind of our day jobs and, my side job of creating capital. We need to invest in people who do that, who help us do that, right? We don't have enough people of color who are data scientists. We just don't, right? And so we need to invest in people who are creating pipelines, people who are aiding data sets in any way that they can in different alternative ways, because we know this is a privileged field. It's very privileged. And we know the people who need this don't have that privilege. And so I think we also have to amplify, get access to people to get involved.
Good point. Thank you, Leisha. And you touched upon a nerve there as a woman of color and a data scientist. I was very thrilled to join Women in AI, where I could meet other women of diverse backgrounds. Somebody in Nigeria that I recently spoke to and mentored the startups there, right? They come from even not just culturally different economic situation. So I think that message cannot be amplified enough, that we do need diversity in data scientist community as well. So coming to Jessica, like I know Microsoft is doing some amazing work. I know I've used their synthetic data algorithms as well. So I want to understand a little bit about something that Leisha touched upon, right? So the economic impact is so universal today as we speak. You see pockets of communities in the US. So when you talk about Indian Americans, you might see a spike in the e-commerce spending during Diwali, which is not a national holiday in the US, but it's a holiday for all the Indians living in the US. So you see those commercial examples that would be relevant for any organization who needs a pulse on their consumers. So when you think about these hidden data sets and challenges of finding these culturally rich data sets, what is your experience with regards to Microsoft? They're doing some good stuff. Can you talk about it, Jessica?
Sure, and I also wanted to touch on, why do we need to focus on these hidden data sets? And I talked about bias earlier and how AI systems and AI models can be biased, but what about if those data sets, those cultures, those groups of people aren't even included in the data? What happens to the culture and their stories? It's so critical that that they're included, because otherwise it's not able to be passed down, it's not able to be included, and these entire groups of people are just missing out. And so that's why it's really important to be able to think about these data sets that aren't the most common types of groups of people that people interact with, and that's why it's so important what IVAL is doing. Now, to answer your question about what Microsoft is doing, and so we have a great program called AI for Good, where we've invested over $100 million in various different, AI for Earth, AI for humanitarian action, AI for culture, and for a lot of different things where we provide grants to people that are, want to create new data sets, want to create new solutions in order to help solve these challenges that people are experiencing today. And so I encourage, I'll put the link in the window as well, but I encourage you to take a look to see what Microsoft is doing and how we're investing. Because AI for Good is, AI is going to change the entire world as we know it. It's going to continue to do so every single day. AI touches every one of us every day, whether it's, Siri or going on Amazon to buy something, or looking on Netflix, or, and that's just really the beginning. And it's really going to transform the way the world is today. And so, it's a great way to see how the impact that we're doing, with saving animals, with, providing water for different groups of people that don't have it, for being able to take a look in advance and predict when there's going to be famines, or being able to use precision agriculture to take a look and be able to change the way that we're doing farming in order to react with the soil and the weather, so that we can produce the right amount of crops. So I will share that in the window as well.
Thank you, Jessica. I think we have covered all the participants in this round. Over to you, Devar.
Thank you so much. And I know there's questions that are coming in, and we will get to them in just a couple minutes. So one thing that I wanted to share is, this is again from research that Jennifer has done at Pink Lion. So do you all remember the Apple Card and the way its algorithms determined credit lines? Do you remember Amazon getting rid of its secret AI recruiting tool that showcased bias against women? I mean, the list goes on and on. Do you know that IBM just decided this week that they will not use the facial recognition apps? Okay,
Right.
This is why we need new data sets. So I'm going to share my screen and show you this video that's literally a minute long, and then we're going to go to your questions. Oh, I'm not sure I can. That's okay. I'll put it in the chat. You guys can watch it. So we made this video that shows, the faces of women from around the world in history, and what we're trying to do with capturing these stories and getting these data sets, because then future products and solutions, whether it's a Fitbit focused on women, or other financial products that are focused on women, it'll actually relate to us more. And so it's only makes sense. Like, you're going to make more revenue if you have better data sets on how to reach women and how to inspire them. So that's part of it. So we're going to go to the questions. One of the questions here says, do you see any risk in more diverse data sets? Could they be abused to more effectively implement biases? AP, do you want to take that? there is obviously fear of, you know, people using things in a negative way for anything. But I think my answer is that there's an urgency that we do this right. And a collective group like the women that you're seeing on this call today, who are coming at this from a very responsible vantage point, I think collaboration is the key. But AP, could you answer, please?
Sure. So the way you said it right, I think you can make something amazing and turn it into bad, right? Everybody can do that. However, from history, just like I said previously, in healthcare, this is still a problem. Like we've had healthcare systems across the world, not just in the US, for a very long period of time. And we still have challenges building good medication and good healthcare systems for people, just because we don't have enough data and we don't know how to build better medicines or even reach out to communities and to people. So one way of solving the problem is to start early and be inclusive, right? And as you go along the process, you improve, you be agile, and you improve as you go along the process, versus building something and then 50 years, you're like, oh no, we should have just learned from our mistakes. So I believe in a lot of the good that people have spoken here. Jessica kind of pointed out AI for good, and that's what I would vouch for as we collect these data sets. And I think that's the intent that at least this team that I'm talking to has in taking these data sets and going forward. And I'll stay positive on that note.
There's a question from, go ahead, Jessica.
Oh, I was going to say, I have something to add to that.
Sure.
You know, there's obviously going to be risk. We talked about this earlier. And I think that's why it's so important to be transparent with how you're creating these models, with how you're collecting the data, so that people are able to provide input. Having a human in the loop is critical, and making sure that they're able to check against the system and make sure there's numerous groups there as well, like the AI partnership, the Partnership for AI, that, you know, are taking, you know, governments, education, or, you know, colleges and little companies to come together and make sure that we're able to create responsible AI solutions, and making sure that we're all thinking about this. But like I said, transparency is key.
Yeah. And to speak to transparency, so when we go forward with the data ideation challenge, once we've raised $5,000 more, because that's the way Top Coder works, which is, again, an amazing opportunity. So then we are going to be putting the results from that ideation challenge on AI Commons after 3 months, so that whatever results we come up with as part of the data ideation challenge will be shared publicly. I think, to speak to what Jessica is saying, you have to be able to be transparent and show how you're getting this information and how it could be useful to others. Jennifer, let me go to you. If you could share some thoughts about, you know, what AI solutions are you looking for to help? This is really, you know, you're the first female AI founder of a, you know, coming from a testing background. Just tell us a little bit from what you think needs to come to the market.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned testing, and one of the things that's really critical in this is having the appropriate testing of the algorithms and what's being developed and how that's working as we're leveraging them. And as Jessica said, we're big proponents of, you know, there's different schools of thoughts on how you leverage AI. One is humanized AI solutions, where it is there to literally augment what humans are good at, which is contextualized intelligence, putting relevant information into that and understanding if it's accurate and correct. And so we're big on humanized AI solutions as opposed to AI replacing humans and taking over. We would like those to be humanized AI solutions that have been thoroughly vetted and tested, and then having the humans be an integral part, as Jessica mentioned. We see, someone asked the question, one of the new roles we've already seen developed in some very large tech organizations is human bot managers, where instead of managing people, they're managing bots who have tasks and performing tasks, but the humans are there to ensure that the bots are performing as expected, that they understand, as Jess mentioned, there is bias. They understand the bias that was built in, that we're okay with that the data set is diverse. There's also going to be a lot of things around testing for deep fakes and fake information in general that's generated, because that's going to be a huge issue of, we could all do the right thing, but there's always people that want to do the wrong thing and ingest bad information out into the market. So I think there's going to be huge things around identifying fake data, fake information, deep fakes, the things that are out there to inhibit the good AI that's being built.
Thank you
Yeah,
so
that's
much.
interesting you said that, because apart from deep fakes, we are living in the moment of fake news, and the fake news is being also generated by bots, natural language processing algorithms. But I want to go to an interesting question asked by Michael Nowak here in the chat, and maybe Leisha can take this question. I would like to hear about the role of voice AI, Michael asks. He says, voice is unique because it contains data and context like sad, happy, gender, and ethnic origin. So what should, sorry, I missed the question.
What should society do to govern the use of voice chatbots, digital assistants? Should the default voice be male or female? I had it up.
Sorry, I just scrolled through. Thank you, Jessica. I wanted to hear from Leisha, because I know recently Capital One introduced a gender neutral chatbot called Eno. So I think it's an interesting question. I think most organizations might default to gender neutral voice bots, but Leisha, do you have a viewpoint about voice bots?
Yeah, I loved when Google rolled out the John Legend voice and the Issa Rae voice and let you pick who you want to be. And my day job, we're all about consumer choices. And I think that people have a right to choose. I identify as a Black woman, that's important to me. If you identify as a non-binary femme, great. If you don't want to choose, don't be forced to choose. I think we have to be able to accept where people how they want to show up, who they want to be, and give them choice and freedom in that. I am very empowered by certain voices. When I go to church and hear, preachers yelling, I like it. There's something riveting about hearing people's voices. And I think having the freedom to select, I don't believe we should default one is better than the other, or one is more soothing, or one, it's all individual preference. And if we, the more choices, the better. So I wouldn't limit us to saying one is better than the other, just providing people the ability to resonate with whichever kind of voice. I like grandmother voices. I like old people voices. That makes me feel good. I like to hear my kids' voices. So whatever it is that is inspirational to you, you should have that choice.
I think going back to preferences, like I know that Waze introduced Cookie Monster, which is a choice my son wants. So I like that. Give a preference
so
of what voice.
Every time you run the doorbell, hello. And my daughter did that, kept touching the doorbell just to hear that voice.
Awesome.
Yeah, there is a question here about for the non-techies, how are we able to collaborate in terms of telling the story of people of color through data science and collecting that kind of data. So this is my cue, because it looks like I can share this video, and I want us to watch it together, because hopefully the audio will work. But yeah, here we go. Okay, so the point here is that women throughout history and mythology have inspired us. And I had a really poignant conversation with Mariana Lin, who was the principal writer for Siri at Apple. She's no longer there, but she was the principal writer for Siri. And she talked about how even Chinese mythology has influenced women like herself and others who really get strength from these stories. So it's really important for these women in mythology and history who have shaped us, who have helped create, you know, our ethos and who we are, to be able to teach machines about that. It's not far-fetched. And this is part of why this is such an incredibly exciting conversation. We're doing a 4-part series on cultural AI. This is the first one. The next one next week on June 17th is going to be focusing on heritage and healthcare. We will have one of the lead data scientists who was working on a major diverse healthcare initiative with the United States government on. We will have a physician on who deals obviously with this on a regular basis, and also somebody who invests in healthcare. And the series goes on and on. We have to start in talking about cultural intelligence and the concept of artificial intelligence, because AI has to be a two-way street. It is not a two-way street right now. Right now, it is what builders have thought that they're going to create because they think it's useful to society. And then we wake up and we find out that it's not exactly useful. So let's take, Swathi, another couple questions. And I just wanna, we only have 5 minutes left. So let's take one more question, and let's please have everyone have 30 seconds to close. So I want each of the panelists to have 30 seconds to share some last words.
So there is a question about data privacy. Often the most underrepresented populations are also the most vulnerable to harm from surveillance and reticent to share data due to privacy needs. Technical privacy solutions such as differential privacy have privacy and accuracy trade-offs with context and community-specific impact. Have you seen examples of increased diversity in data contribution and protect community safety needs? This is again very relevant, because in the context of COVID, we have heard of technology solutions that are forced despite privacy concerns. Collaborative privacy design, in my mind, and I will pass on to Jennifer to answer this question, examples of collaborative privacy design to both increase diversity and protect community safety needs. It's a complex problem, not just technologically, but also outside technology. And all I can say is nowadays, agencies and commercial organizations are checking the box for evaluating solutions based on privacy concerns. And there are specific design techniques technologically you should consider, but often it's neglected. But over to you, Jennifer. Do you have examples of privacy design to increase diversity in data contribution?
Well, I think as you mentioned, this is a big problem. We even saw it with Google partnering up with Mayo Clinics and hospitals.
Right. Mm-hmm.
It was in the news around how that was going to work and the access to that data and information. So I don't see that this is solved. I see it's an ongoing concern. What I do see is there's an opportunity right now in the world for all of us as consumers to hold the companies that we're engaging, spending money with, and interacting with responsible for how they address this concern. So I think it's going to be partly up to educating consumers and being transparent about how companies and organizations are using the data that they are capturing and collecting, and then asking the collective whole of us as consumers to say, do we believe that the companies we're engaging with are upholding the values we would expect with our own data? And then being clear about whether or not we're going to spend money with those companies. Because, you know, it's one thing to want that privacy, but then when we basically feed them with money and our dollars, we're incenting them to continue to do the similar behavior they've done in the past. So I think part of it is consumer advocacy, AI for Good, some of the organizations that have been built around holding organizations accountable for the way data is leveraged and utilized in the future. And I think it should be a massive topic for everyone right now, given what we had seen prior to AI with privacy breaches, with Equifax, just about everyone. It's not if, it's when people get access to data. So how do we handle that? And I think that should be top of mind for all of us right now, of how do we address this as a global collective to solve that issue.
No, that's a good point. And apart from consumers, the regulation and policymakers, we had a very good event in DC Emerging Technologies on March 27th, where we had policymakers from Capitol Hill talk about regulation of AI, right? Because if it is left to consumers alone, we see Facebook, nobody is stopping using, although they are violating all kinds of privacy matters that we know and not know about. So it was an interesting conversation we had on AI regulation. And again, I'll put the link of the YouTube video for those of you specifically concerned about privacy and AI. We had a whole topic webinar about that. And over to you, Devar. I think we can wind up nicely. We have 1 more minute, but any takeaways from this session?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it was a remarkable conversation. Leisha, AP, do you have any quick final words? We'd love to hear from you one more time.
Let's do this.
Cool. Jessica or Leisha?
Become a data scientist. Tell your children to become data scientists. We need representation in these fields, so we're not the only ones.
Awesome. Jessica?
Yeah, cultural data sets are important. And, you know, I really hope that everyone on this call gets engaged and figures out how we can create these more diverse data sets. And thank you to Devar and Swathi and all the panelists. Great insights.
Thank you. And Jennifer, take it away. One last word.
This is our opportunity. We should all get involved and be a part of this. Don't just sit back, get knowledge and keep learning on these topics.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us, all of you. And we'll make sure and send you links to the event next week in case you can join. On behalf of myself, Swathi, Women in AI, and Ali from The Bridge, thank you so much for joining us and have a wonderful week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.